Hello, Faith United Youth and others. Welcome to this week's video lesson. It is June 14th, which is just crazy that it has been going on this long. And, you know, my thoughts this week continue to circle back to this is happening still, and this is just craziness, and, you know, kind of realizing that things are very different now, and it may be for a while. All that being said, we actually are going to start with a game called, it's traditionally called Two Truths and a Lie, but I'm calling it Four Truths and a Lie because I want to tell the truth. So this is kind of a thing that we do sometimes in youth group, and some of you may be groaning because you don't want to do it, or you don't like this game, and others of you might think, oh, I'm totally going to get all these right. You might, if you know me, and if you don't, then this will help you to get to know me a little more. So I'm going to tell you four truths and a lie. So these are all of them. At the end of the video, I will reveal to you which one was a lie about myself. Okay, so I have never been to Africa. I worked at Starbucks for 8 years. A baboon jumped out at me on a roof to attack once. I was once chased by killer bees, and I'm not a fan of heavy music. So see if you can guess which one of those four things is a lie. I'll say them again. I was once chased by killer bees. I worked at Starbucks for 8 years. I've never been to Africa. I'm not a fan of heavy music, and a baboon jumped out at me on a roof to attack. So at the end of the video, you'll get to see which one is the lie. I am struggling right now with allergies, so if I have to sneeze or something like that, please forgive me. I'm not trying to be gross. It's just a very crazy allergy season this year, and it's been a thing. I am going to be kicking off, starting tonight, a new series, and it is entitled The Road. And this was given to us by group mission trips. If you were on our mission trip last year, you will be familiar with group missions. It's who we went to West Virginia with, and it's who we were planning on going to Grand Rapids, Michigan with this year, and who we will be going with next year. Group Missions is a really amazing organization, and they have given out some of their devotionals and some of their resources and programming from previous years for people to be able to use, and they really felt like this series in particular was applicable to everything that's happening in the world right now. So it is called The Road, and we're going to be discussing the story about the two men who were walking on the road to Emmaus, and some of you may be familiar with that. And if you're not, then we're going to get familiar over the next couple weeks. So we're going to begin by reading in Luke 24:13 through 24. Okay, let me see if I can find it. I actually have it marked this time. Okay, so a little bit of context. Jesus has recently died and risen again, and he is appearing here and there to different people. And so let's listen to what's happening here. This is once again Luke 24:13 through 24. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem, and you do not know the things that have happened here these few days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see." Okay, so we have these two men, and by the way, we will for the next couple weeks be going through this entire chapter, but for now that's where we're going to stop, and we're going to kind of discuss some of it. So we have these two men. What we do know about them is one of them is named Cleopas. We don't know the other man's name. And they are just leaving Jerusalem. They're walking to a village called Emmaus, which is about 7 miles. Some of you may have recently done the 8-mile walk for George Floyd, and you'll be familiar with about how far that is. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened, and as they're discussing, suddenly Jesus appears, kind of out of nowhere, and they are kept from understanding who he is at that point. And he's basically trying to engage with them and saying, like, what are you talking about as you walk along? And their response is kind of like, don't you know what's been happening? Like, it would be like, you know, this monumental event that had just taken place, and you know, kind of a top headline in the news stories. And so they're kind of like questioning, like, how do you not know what's going on? And so he's still engaging with them and kind of trying to figure out what's on their hearts specifically. And he says, what things? And so they go through and they tell him about it's about Jesus, you know, so they're telling Jesus about Jesus, which I always think is really interesting. And they basically say who he was. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God, and, you know, how he was killed, and how, you know, they had hope. They had hope. It says, we had hoped that he was going to be the one who was going to redeem Israel. I want you to think about that for a minute, because this week we are starting to begin the time frame of all of the things that we had hoped would happen. It's really funny because the theme for our youth annual conference this year was actually hope, and I know a lot of us really hoped that this would be the weekend that we would be there. You know, under normal circumstances we would have been on our way home at this point. They had hope. They had put their hope in Jesus, and they were confused, and they were disappointed, and they didn't know what to think. You know, I think that the world had just been rocked. What they had really thought was going to happen was just, you know, that he was going to come in and he was going to redeem Israel. He was going to be this, you know, a political figure who was going to kind of take over everything and make everything right, and it would be immediate, and they would see the fruit of all of that just immediately. And they were so confused because, you know, they buried him and he was dead, and their hopes were smashed. And though he had been telling them, this whole time, you know, this is what's going to happen, nobody really got it. Nobody understood until later, looking back. And they were so confused, and they were, you know, do we believe these women who just told us that, you know, Jesus wasn't in the tomb? What do we think about this? What's going on? You know, just more questions than answers. And I think that we can all relate to that right now, where we have more questions than answers at this time. I want you to think about a couple of things, and I'm not going to answer them for you. I think, you know, I'd like for you to engage this in your heart. The first thing is, what might have motivated these men to decide to leave Jerusalem and go back home? So think about what they were experiencing, that they were just kind of like, I guess we're going to go home. You know, maybe you're feeling that way now, that, you know, like I said, what you thought was going to happen during this time didn't happen, and they're experiencing great disappointment and doubt. The second thing I want you to consider, and I want to say this in the most non-judgmental way possible, because this is something that I also need to consider, and that is, how do you personally experience disappointment? I'll be honest with you, I am not always great at handling disappointment. I'm really not good at handling doubt at times. I like to know what's going on. Do you complain? Do you become bitter? Maybe you handle it well. Maybe you kind of take things in stride and just kind of move along and say, well, whatever will be, will be, you know. Sometimes I hear that song and I'm like, I wish I could think that way. Whatever will be, will be. What a, you know, thought. Maybe you're somewhere in between, where it kind of depends. I want you to take that kind of to heart and think about, you know, how you handle these things, and you know, what we can learn from their, you know, kind of confusion and disappointment and doubt. we're going to come back to this next week. We're not going to leave it there. But for now, we are going to leave it, and I want you to kind of think about that, and maybe you can wrestle with that. And the final question is, despite everything being changed and canceled, what is one hope that you have for this summer? I know for myself, it's time to kind of dig in and do a little more self-evaluation, kind of deepen my relationship with the Lord, and deepen my relationship with my family, and, you know, various aspects there. I will answer your question. We began this video with 4 truths and a lie. I'll remind you of what they are. I was once chased by killer bees. That is a truth. In India, there was a swarm of killer bees that my team had smoke going up towards through a fire that they had built, and those bees came down and attacked, and I was far enough away. I didn't get stung, but many of my team members did. Nobody died. They were not literally killer bees, but, you know, that's what their name is, I guess. The second one is a baboon jumped out at me on a roof to attack. That sounds like it wouldn't be true, but it is true. That also happened in India. We were on a roof, which their roofs are flat, and we were just kind of practicing for a skit or something, and all of a sudden this baboon jumped off of another roof onto the roof, and it just went kind of like that. And of course we all scattered and ran into our rooms, and it was very scary. And animals can be terrifying. I worked at Starbucks for 8 years. That's true. Most of you know that. It was a great job. I loved it. Sometimes I miss making drinks. And yeah, I am a big fan. I have never been to Africa. That is the truth. I would love to go to Africa. That is one of the continents that I have not been to, and I think it would be amazing to visit Africa. And the final thing is, I am not a fan of heavy music. Well, that is the lie. And if you know me pretty well, you know that I do like heavy music. I may not look like it, but I spent much of my teenage years going to heavy music concerts and shows and things like that with my teenage friends, and I can really get into that, and I like all kinds of music. That's just one of the genres. So that was a little bit about me, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the videos. I hope that you are enjoying some of these summer days, and really getting to know your families a little better, and I hope you're being loving to each other, and I am praying for you once again. God bless, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.